On tonight's episode of Locked On Lightning, what's going on with the Lightning? They dropped their third straight last night, and we take a look at possible playoff matchups. It's all coming down to the wire, and we talk about all the news as it breaks here on Locked On Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Adam Danker. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Locked On Lightning. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150. Win or lose, visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. On today's episode, we're talking about dropping 3 straight in a row. Not a good look for the Lightning as they are just one game left before they hit the playoffs. As to who they're playing, it's still a toss-up. It really comes down to it tonight. The Panthers, the Bruins, they're both playing tonight. We're going to talk about that at the end of the episode. We also talk about one last matchup with the Toronto Maple Leafs, what to expect. We talk about that as well. But before we grab any of those topics, I humbly ask you to go ahead and subscribe and download the podcast. If you haven't already done so, go ahead. We are available wherever podcasts are available in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. So go ahead, subscribe to our channel there, hit that notification button. So as soon as the newest episode drops, you'll be notified. So the Lightning dropped their third straight last night to the Buffalo Sabres, in which was really and I'm sorry, it's not their third straight, it's their second straight, but it's still, I don't know, it just feels like this team has lost 3 in a row in some way, just because you see how they played, and yeah, they have lost 3 in a row. It's weird that in the schedule, I mean, in the standings, it doesn't reflect that, but that's weird. But yeah, they've lost 3 in a row, and it's not a good look going into the playoffs. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I have all the faith in the world that this team is going to play well once the playoffs start. Like we say pretty much on a yearly basis, you know, you could always guarantee the Lightning to take it up a notch once the playoffs actually start. You know, whatever insecurities or fears that you may have about this team kind of go away, whether it's early on in the series or later on like we saw last year. But the thing that was concerning to me about last night's loss against Buffalo, and I will say that was a game that I kind of was wishfully hoping that they would have won, but I think I mentioned on yesterday's episode that I wouldn't have been the least surprised if the Lightning dropped this one either, which they obviously did 4-2. But the thing that was concerning to me, because what we've seen out of this team over the past month has been really just flawless execution in some of their wins, especially from the beginning of March and then heading into about the early stages of early week of April. You really saw a team that was laser focused, ready to go, really looked like they were playoff ready. And they were a team that was defensively sound. They weren't making the flashiest plays. They weren't really doing anything too overwhelmingly exciting on the defensive side. Like I've said repeatedly, that really what it comes down to it, and really what all you really need to see out of this Lightning team is just doing the things that are expected of you on either side of the ice. And that's what they've been doing. But last night was eye-opening because there was a couple of chances last night where, and we've kind of seen this over the last couple of games, but you kind of figure after 2 in a row, you kind of put the clamp down if you're John Cooper. I'm not saying he didn't, to really come down on your team and then them go out and, not win, that's a whole different thing. I'm not holding John Cooper responsible. Sometimes too, it also just comes down to that's just the way the cookie crumbles on certain nights, but allowing second chances, allowing a plethora of opportunity in front of Vasilevsky, whether it be on rebounds, just creating traffic. And that's something that you really, if you're not going to score as much as you have lately, that's one thing. I mean, you can't put up 5 goals every game. But in the same breath, you also can't say that allowing the opposing team to kind of almost do whatever they want in front of the net at certain times is a recipe for winning long term. And I know I've said it, and I'm sure some of you are saying it here right now as you're listening or watching the show on YouTube. Let's not sweat it. Obviously, we're not sweating it. There's one game left in the playoffs, one game left in the regular season. If you're not ready, you're not ready. That's really what it comes down to. It's you've really done all you can to get playoff ready. But at the same time, I mean, that is just something that you can't have happen. And that really is what it comes down to. I would have liked to have seen, even though, I will talk about it in the next segment about how you do definitely want to end the season on a win at home against one of your top rivals. You definitely want to get that last win, but at the same time, you definitely want to get that monkey off your back against Buffalo, who has pretty much had your number, not only this season, but for really the last couple of years. That's the kind of thing. How little or how small could really just be the last cherry on top for you to get ready and feel confident if this team isn't confident already for the upcoming playoffs. So, a disappointing outcome, a disappointing end to that season series. Some disappointing things that we saw in this game, obviously. The front net presence in front of Vasilevsky was definitely the highlight of those disappointments. But at the same time, that's the beauty of hockey, is that you get another chance tomorrow night against the Toronto Maple Leafs at home. So coming up, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what to expect from that game. Will we see, maybe some other lower tier players getting some more burn, some more than others? We'll talk about that as well. But first, we're going to talk about today's first sponsor, and that is our friends over at FanDuel. Now, it's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150. Win or lose, bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on the app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So as always, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel there. Hit that notification button, as well as drop a comment below and give us a thumbs up. It really helps us reach new listeners. So that really helps in a big way. And we're getting ever closer to that 1,000 subscription mark. So definitely, if you do watch the podcast, especially on our channel, make sure to subscribe. Help us grow. Help us reach more Lightning fans as the playoffs are right around the corner. So we just got done talking about a very disappointing loss against a division rival, but that's the one thing that I've always said about hockey that I love, just like baseball, is that you get there is definitely ample amount of opportunities to be had in terms of figuring it out and really getting your act together. And I'm not saying that the Lightning are in disarray or anything. I mean, yeah, winning 3 in a row sucks. I mean, losing 3 in a row sucks, but at the same time, you know, it's not the end of the world. The Lightning have already clinched. As we're looking at it, they have a choice. Well, they don't have a choice, but they will either be facing the Panthers or the Maple Leafs. And tonight, seeing the Panthers or the Bruins. So as of right now, I'm recording this. It's 8:30. The Bruins are down 2-0 heading into the second intermission. And the Panthers are also down 2-0 heading into with about 4 minutes left in that first period against Toronto. And so we're going to be doing some scoreboard watching on this show in the later half and asking about that stuff. But as for tomorrow night, we're going to be seeing a matchup that I kind of would have wished to have seen once again in the playoffs, not because of the history of the Maple Leafs not being able to get the job done. It's just, I don't know, there's something about Lightning Maple Leafs over the last couple of years that has really just, I'm not saying it's a better rivalry than Bruins Lightning or even Cats Lightning. It's just, I don't know, it's two teams that are very different from each other, but I think that are very similar. And you could see it in these games that these teams have played against each other. And that's what I think is really the most enjoyable thing of these games. Now, going into tomorrow night's game, Toronto is currently up 2-1 on the season series. The Lightning, of course, are looking to try and even that up. There's also going to be a ton of Maple Leafs fans in the arena. That's just how it rolls with these games. I heard there's a ton of Maple Leafs fans in Florida tonight at the Panthers game. So don't be shocked when you see a lot of blue and white jerseys that are not Lightning jerseys tomorrow night. But getting back to my point, these teams are very different, obviously, in their recent success, but also very similar because I look at when the things are going well, it's kind of interchangeable identities for these teams that we've seen over the last couple of years as well as this season, is that, you know, from someone who watches the Lightning every day, when the Leafs kind of collapse and burn or have their moments, their are you kidding me moments, you know, where that might be something that is somewhat regular of an occurrence to a Maple Leafs fan, that is where really us as Lightning fans look at it as kind of like, oh, that's what the Lightning are when things are really not going well. And I'm sure Maple Leafs fans could attest to this to a certain degree, that when the Lightning were playing well, that's what the Maple Leafs could be at certain times, because they definitely have the talent. Let's not sit here and completely crap on the Maple Leafs. Let's give credit where credit is due. That's a very good hockey team, and they're a team that, when all the stars align, are one of the best in the league. Definitely top 10 in my opinion, possibly on the fringe of top 5 at certain times. Obviously not this year, but that's what really is going to be the key to tomorrow night's game, is that do not let this team get into a groove. Do not let the planets and the stars align for the Toronto Maple Leafs, because as we have seen in past games, when this team gets going, they're dangerous, they're overwhelming, and especially if the Lightning are on the other side of that, not being able to get anything going, not being able to really do anything that they want to do, that is going to be a nightmare of a scenario for the Lightning in their last game of the season. Obviously, the Maple Leafs, I'm sure, are going to be very inclined to populate the net in front of Vasilevsky, create a lot of second and third chances in front. And I said this in the last game, and I'm pretty sure I say this every single game that these two teams meet up with each other, is that do not let 34 beat you. Because I think that's where the Leafs kind of get stretched thin, even though you look at this roster and you see all the weapons that they have that could hurt you. It's kind of the parallel for the Lightning is for the Maple Leafs is don't let 86 hurt you. Make the other guys hurt you. Make the other guys beat you. And really, that's what it comes down to. I feel like, if Nylander scores one, or Tavares, or Marner actually scored one tonight, then all right, that's fine. But when Austin Matthews scores a goal for this team, it gets everybody going. And that's the same thing that could be said for the Lightning team with Nikita Kucherov. And really, so the key really for both teams tomorrow night is don't let the other team's superstar beat you. Which, that would really suck because Kucherov is 1 assist away from 100. He's probably going to get it. I mean, I wonder what the odds are. If I don't think FanDuel has them. I don't think any site has them. But that's definitely going to be in the back of their mind is when he has the puck, you're going to see heads on swivels. And then in the other part of that, on the other side of the ice for the Lightning, outside of the traffic issues in front of 88, what you got to do is you can't allow Austin Matthews to get into that slot area, especially on the high area, because all it takes is one timer, one wrister, and that's it. It's going to be a goal. I mean, I would say more than 50% of the chance of more than 50% of the time, that's going to be a goal because he's just so good. It's not a Vasilevsky thing. It's just great scoring beats great goaltending. That's really what it comes down to. And some might disagree with that. And we could definitely have a debate about that possibly in the summer, in the offseason. But that's really going to be my concerns for the games because other than that, my only concern or really the thing I'm going to be looking out for this game is really going to be the possibility that maybe, depending on the score, we might see John Cooper at least. I can't attest for what the Leafs are going to do. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Lightning are not in this or if it's a little bit of a lopsided effort that we might see him pull the reins back just a little bit. And what I mean by that is not necessarily just tell these guys to just not shoot or whatever. It's more so giving, more ice time to your fourth liners, your third line combination guys, stuff like that. Because, I'm not saying that these guys need rest. They definitely don't. I mean, hockey's just a whole nother animal. I mean, the more these guys play, the better. But, it's one of those things where, especially if the Lightning are up by a lot or by a few goals with, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes left, you definitely don't want to run the risk of losing a guy for one game or a series in the first round. So, I'm hoping that we have that issue. I'm hoping that is the issue in terms of, trying to see who's going to get more playing time as the game dwindles down. I'm hoping that the Lightning do finish their season with a win. As for my last prediction of the regular season, predictions, plural, Kucherov gets 100. He becomes the 5th player all time to get 100 assists in a season. Joining Connor McDavid, of course, who did it the other day. And the the Lightning win 4-3. I'm going to say 4-3. I'm going to say Kucherov gets involved. Stamkos gets 41. I'm going to say a goal from Hedman. I think Hedman gets a goal. I think he understands that the playoffs are right here, and he's got to get going himself offensively. So let me know in the comments below, what are your predictions for the last game of the season? I want to hear it all, whether it's realistic or non-realistic. I want to hear it all from you guys, and you could do that on our YouTube page down in the comments section below. And coming up, we're going to be talking about picking your poison. Who would you rather have? Panthers, Bruins? We'll talk about that coming up on our last segment of the show. But first, we'll talk about our last sponsor of today's show, and that is our friends over at the Sleeper app. Now, we are one game left in the NHL regular season, and then it's playoffs, baby. It's playoffs. The Lightning are locked in and they're ready to go. And I want to remind you that you can win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you could win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy contest. All you have to do is pick guys like Braden Point and Steven Stamkos to record more or less than their Sleeper projections, like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, or more in a given game. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. So we're talking about picking your poison, okay? And I hate talking about this. I really do, but I also really want to talk about it at the same time. We talked about it a little bit, or may have hinted at it the other day, talking about Boston. But you know, I always try to live close to what I was taught, saying, you know, be careful what you wish for, especially when it comes to playoff matchups. And just a little update. So in the Maple Leaf Panthers game, Leafs are up 2-1 on the Panthers with about 16 left in the second period. Where in the Boston game, they're still in the middle of the second intermission. Boston's down 2-0. And I don't know. When I look at these two teams, I mean, if both these teams lose, then it's Boston. And I don't know. I've been going back and forth over the last couple of days thinking about this, especially today, because as much as I think Boston's the better matchup because of the goaltending on Boston's side, there's something I just have a feeling in the pit of my stomach with the Lightning up against Boston. You beat them in your last matchup. And it almost feels like you're going to get a team that's hungry coming in. And obviously every team playing in the playoffs is hungry. I mean, I'm not disputing that. But you're going to get a team that's going to have a little bit more pep in their step because of also what happened last year. Whereas with Florida and how the tables have turned, you're getting a team that does have some miles on them. Listen, let's not forget that they were in the Stanley Cup final last year. Granted, it was very short, but this is still a team that I feel, and I respect that team a whole bunch. But that's a team that I don't know. They kind of remind me to a certain degree of Toronto because they've been there, but they haven't really been there. That they don't have that seasoned feel on them. Where Boston, the players that even haven't been there on Boston are still have still been brought up in that system by the guys that have won a cup, that have been to the Eastern Conference Final a bunch of times. So there's that. And on top of that as well, I would rather prefer to play with the series, stay in Florida than going up to a rowdy TD Bank up in Boston. Now, obviously, some of you might disagree. Some of you might agree with me. But yeah, I mean, when it really boils down to it, I prefer the Panthers, who are actually now on a 5-on-3 right now on a power play. That'd be nice if they tied up right now. And I think, when I look at Bobrovsky and I look at him as kind of what he did last year, I look at it and say, show me again. Prove to me that you could do it again. Because we know at this point in time what Vasilevsky could do. It's there. He was able to bring that out of himself, something that we have not seen in quite a few years, to be honest. Let's be honest here. That version of Vasilevsky we have not really seen since really the Stanley Cup final against Montreal. And spurts here and there last year against Toronto, especially in the latter stages of that series. But it's one of those things where I don't think there's no wrong answer and there's no right answer, because you could obviously get two very similar teams if you're picking from Florida or Boston. And you could also get a really poor performance out of Tampa either way. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but still it's one of those things where it's really a toss-up, and you don't know for sure what version of the Lightning and of Florida or Boston you might very well get in that series. So let me know in the comments below. Who do you prefer? I mean, I'm sure it's a conversation that we are going to be having over the next couple of days. Well, not really over the next couple of days, but it's definitely something. Depending on what happens tonight, like I said, Florida needs the win in order for them to play Tampa. If both these teams lose, the Lightning are playing Boston. It's one of those things that I think I will think about really for the rest of the week, regardless, especially during that series, if things don't go well for the Tampa Bay Lightning. But we'll talk about that then. So let me know in the comments below. You can follow us on our social media pages, LO_Lightning on Twitter, Locked_Lightning on Instagram. You give me a follow on Twitter at DankyDank, DENKYD8. Love hearing from y'all. Can't wait to hear more about you about playoff hockey. So that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Tanker. I'll talk to you in the next one.